I have to tell you a secret, Koon. You know, in Singapore, right, in the schools,
Hmm.
when you are in the art stream, 90% of the students would take English literature, right? And
Ah,
maybe 5% would take,
ah.
Chinese literature.
Oh, okay, okay.
I'm one
That's a
of
bit
those
sad.
few who never
Oh,
did English literature,
you
although I
took
was an
Chinese
art
literature.
student. Never,
Ah,
never did any literature.
yes, yes, yes. You didn't take Chinese literature also.
Never lah. My
Oh,
Chinese
that's
is
it.
so terrible.
Mm.
And that's because I had the chance to do both, right? At the secondary
Mm.
level and at the JC level. But when I look at Macbeth, I look at Shakespeare,
Mm.
the language just
Mm.
turns me off completely,
I understand.
and
I understand.
it's
I
also, I think,
understand.
that there is a
I understand.
social kind of cultural element there, that if you do
Yes,
English
yes, yes.
literature, you belong to a
English.
certain group of people,
Mm.
right? Your family is English
Yeah,
educated, middle
yeah,
class, which I was not, right? My
yeah,
my parents didn't
yeah.
know
I
English.
understand. I understand.
And
Yes.
although I love reading, right? I love to read
Mm.
books, but
Mm.
reading Shakespeare, reading
Mm.
those English
Mm.
novelists seemed like a different
Mm.
world for me that I didn't want to explore.
Yes.
I
Yes.
wanted to explore history, which is a different world
Yeah.
in a different
Yes.
way,
Yeah.
right?
And
So,
localized, very
do,
localized, and you can
that's
see
right,
local resonances. Yeah,
right.
not the colonial resonance.
So it's a thing about the language, and it's also a thing about the world that they are trying to introduce to you. I mean,
Mm.
no doubt,
Mm.
right? I believe
Mm.
now that humanities is very important. And
Mm.
literature is one of the great humanities. It teaches us
Mm.
so much about ourselves, right?
Mm.
About the human self, about human condition.
Mm.
So the question I have for you is, do you think that
Mm.
literature can kind of democratize in a way, so that in terms of the text that we select,
Mm.
that
Mm.
we can get more people to read literature and to be interested in literature?
You've got a very good point, and I don't deny it. That don't forget at 76. Sorry to go with my 77 almost. I do have this colonial overlay
Mm.
because don't forget I was taught by Anglican missionaries when I was in St Mary's, and then when I went to University Malaya, it was at a point where there was still a lot of expat lecturers. But I'm one of those people, the post-colonial, or maybe not so post, or maybe one foot there and one foot. I feel that when you love canonical works like Shakespeare or Virginia Woolf or even Henry James or even Chaucer, it doesn't mean that you're uncritical about
Mm.
the British and their colonizing power. So how do you democratize literature? You mustn't just be teaching the canonical works.
Mm.
You must introduce into. There's one writer I love, but he's very hard to read. But never mind, you can try
Even
him.
harder to read, is
Wilson
it?
Harris. Wilson Harris.
Wilson Harris.
Ilsonharris. Wilson Harris, the Caribbean, Guyana. I'm from Guyana. His English is superb, of
Mm.
course. What he does is, if you teach it well to your students, he takes the the historical legacies of Guyana, colonized for so many centuries by first the Spaniards, then other Europeans, conquistadores, they call them. And he turns it he has something called the Guyanese Quartet, 4 novels, into a relooking at the past, where he makes the colonialist himself trapped by his own colonial system. We have forgotten. In literature, we do have, for example, George Orwell. If you read his Burmese Days, where he very openly talked about a colonial officer who didn't even know what to do. Here he was a very powerful agent of colonialism, but I can tell the student, what did Orwell say? Mumble, mumble, the student looks and says, he very powerful lah. He can kill the elephant lah. The elephant in the marketplace, man, he will kill. Then I said, did you read the book? He had a long 5 paragraphs where he said he can't kill the elephant. He didn't know what to do. He was just so shocked because suddenly he was called, and he's the only one who has the power to shoot the elephant, and only one with a rifle probably. Or with his, he just can't, because there's a symbol of this being the elephant in the room. He doesn't even know what to do. So you see, not all colonial officers are totally without heart and conscience. Hmm? So when you teach your student, you teach them the dilemma of being a conquistadors. And one more point, in Wilson Harris, what I like is he gets away from binaries. We are famous for binaries, gray, white. Rich all very bad lah. Local people all very good. He doesn't. He shows that the local people colluded. He shows that even the conquistadores, the powerful ones, there were some very kind ones. So the self and other, when you're binaries, the self and other, and always the self is very big lah, with a big S. The other is very small lah, with the O lah, small O. It's hierarchical. I like writers like Wilson Harris for democratizing the process of colonialism, showing it to be much more complex than we saw it as black and white, and thinking we are all very wonderful lah. That before the colonialists came, they were all in paradise. Do you know that when Chinua Achebe wrote Things Fall Apart, he was honest enough to show that in Igbo society, before the West even knew there was an Igbo society, fighting already. Every warrior wanted to be the Igbo chief. So power nexus is very important among all societies. But someone can fault me and say, "Oi, like that, then you're excusing the colonialists lah." So where is agency? I think agency comes from the recognition of power in all its manifestations. Whether it is the colonialists or our own society, whether it's our own ethnic Chinese group or any other group, it is still power. So we begin to fight for democratization, not targeting only one group. If not, very bodoh lah, black and white lah. Power is so diffuse, and that is what I like Wilson Harris. Very hard to read. The book is very, very hard to read because it's only very thin. But it's so powerful. The words are so powerful because you can have an Arawak Indian woman, the Arawak Indians, the indigenous of Guyana. Suddenly she metamorphosed into a Spanish woman. It's called magic reality, right? Magic realism, which is what all the the Latin American writers do. And every group go on to read lah, because no logic. They're saying literature does not based on logic only. So the two coming together is actually Wilson Harris' way of saying, hey, power is diffuse, no black and white. Shakespeare, how can you say you don't like him? But don't worry. My brother told me, please, at least don't say anything. Please don't give us your soliloquies of Shakespeare Tolo. Time and time, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, just please don't. But you see, the beauty of that is that you forgot. Shakespeare also from a lower class. He also had to struggle and fight very hard. And then Elizabeth I said, this one is quite good. He was poverty-stricken. So you must read Macbeth again. You must read King Lear. But not the whole lot lah. Right, not Paul. Don't read the whole lot.
Yeah, I enjoy what you just say. I wish I had attended your class, but I didn't. Yeah, I wasn't.
Shakila will tell you. Shakila, Moses' wife, will tell you. She was my first year student.
Oh,
I taught the Great Gatsby. I taught the Great Gatsby in the class, and there were these two guys. Sorry, cousin, I'm diverting. There were these two people. They were quite interested in each other. You see, we had to have some fun in life. We can't be so serious, academic, and balancing binaries lah, all that. So there was this guy who was quite interested in this girl. So I noticed that, and I said, "Oh, we are going to dance Charleston. You don't know how to do it. Do you know how to do it?" So I asked the couple to come up. And they did the Charleston, but unfortunately, the romance didn't last long. After the second year, they parted. No, literature is fun too. But coming back to your point, the one that has to do with the fact that the book is full of suffering, you have to give spaces for people to breathe. One thing came to my mind. You said that you love physiotherapy because it has a lot to do with face-to-face suffering of people and patients, stroke patients, dementia even. Yes, it is very, very hard. I have a friend's daughter who is doing that now. She's feeling the pressure. But in a sense, Paul, you haven't run away from that suffering. Because when you do these works of historical moments of suffering, you are still dealing with people who have gone through this. So the compassion is still there. Okay, she's Kasing, talking too long, Kasing.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I guess now you're not just working on suffering in a very technical way, right? You are actually researching it, you're getting deeper into it, you are writing about it. So it's a different relationship with that experience. I want to ask you, Paul, about, like in the beginning when I knew you, you were kind of struggling to find a place in academia. talk about the experience of being an adjunct, and those struggles in Malaysia.
Wow. I think even though I was struggling through, but then I'm quite lucky compared to uh many friends, in the sense that I was only jobless like for uh maybe not more than 2 years, and there are other people who until today they cannot find any job in the academia. So I was still lucky that I can still find a job as a fellow, even only for contract for 3 years in first in UM, and then immediately I joined USM. So it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad for me. But of course, the very first 2 3 years after I got my PhD, I was willing to take up jobs that doesn't even match my qualification. For example, I work as just an RA, despite that I already have a PhD, RA for some research project, just for to pay bills. I need to pay bills, right? So I was willing to do that lah. But yeah, it was a very humbling process for me. I know the struggle of and those who are more junior than me, I think they are facing even more challenges than during my time. My time, it was already getting difficult. The job market, academic job market was really getting very difficult. But now it's even more difficult because the university expects you to already have at least 2 or 3 publications in IXI index journals in order to get just a contract job or just like a postdoctoral fellowship. But that wasn't like that. It wasn't like that during my time when I just graduated. I can still get a fellowship without having to get published in ISI. But of course, I did already have some publication, like in Scopus journals, but not so much in not in ISI index. Yeah, but compared to Singapore, the competition in Malaysia is like nothing lah. I understand the situation in Singapore is even.
I wouldn't say it's not like nothing. Tell us about the bigger context, right? Are Malaysian universities hiring Malaysian faculty? I mean, how bad is the problem of adjuncts?
I Malaysia, we have the public higher education and the private higher education. To be frank, it's very difficult to. There are no social science department or even literary studies department in private higher education industry. They only have communication studies, which is very job specific because you can be a journalist, you can be a DJ, you can be a news presenter. So these are so-called occupation-based kind of like courses, which is related and relevant to social science, but they are not social science. So you would never find a course in philosophy or political science or even anthropology, sociology in private higher education industry
but
in Malaysia.
There are those humanities and arts people, right, in the private universities.
Theater studies, yes. Over the last few years, over the last decade, a decade or two, there are theater studies. For example, I believe in Taylor, INTI, I'm not too sure. New Era College, yes, New Era College, but it is in Mandarin, but for those in English, I think Taylor, they have theater studies.
Don't you have political scientists there?
Monash, yes,
right.
yes, but
yes.
Monash and Nottingham,
right.
But the position is so few. There's just so few. Okay. So, if we are talking about public universities, no places for almost very difficult for foreign scholars, and unless you are just doing a fellowship in public university or but in recent years, because of global ranking, part of the points you need to achieve points in hiring foreigners. That's going to the university. You will get more points. So now we see more and more contract academic staff who are foreigners. in the public U. But but they will never be able to get a permanent job because they are foreigners. Because to be a permanent academic staff in public U, you must become a civil servant, and only Malaysians can become civil servant. So that's why the situation is different from Singapore. Can foreigners get a tenure in the public university in Singapore?
Most of them do.
Yeah, so that's very different.
Yeah, and they can get promoted as well, you know, to
very
leadership
good deal for
positions.
them. Yeah, very good deal in Singapore. But I think one of the problems, and this is something that I don't know whether I should say, is that there are many, many professors who are very, very productive still into old age. But there are also some who have, for some reason or another, decided that they are less, and maybe they have other things in their life that they want to do, fair enough. But they still want to remain in academia, and that doesn't give the younger folk a chance, I think. I think it is something that calls back to the honesty of the person. If you feel that you are better able to do things outside, or that you have come to a point in your life when you want to be, there's nothing wrong with that. Be more spiritual, be doing more spiritual work, or whatever else that calls you. Then vacate that spot so that someone younger can come in. Otherwise, the positions are all clogged up.
Yeah, they probably don't need that money
That's
either.
how I feel. That's how I feel. But then someone will say, you very easy, like you retired at 55.
But can I go back to the point of positionality that so Koon mentioned just now regarding, you know, as a researcher, when you are meeting your interlocutor, sorry to detract a bit, but I think that is very important for me, because it is a thing that I have been reflecting on. We try as best to be honest to our interlocutor, but how will that come to influence the dynamics is also something that really something that I've been thinking about as well. Will they say things that they think that we researcher want to hear? And then that is going to, you know, completely, it has a lot of influence over the kind of stories that we are going to get. So how do we be honest, yet at the same time remain open, so that the interlocutor feel that they won't feel like uncomfortable telling us positions that they think that we might disagree with. So I think that is more important for me, you know, to be as open as possible, so that the interlocutor are also willing to open up, including open up with some thoughts or ideas that we disagree with. And this also come up with the life after. There are views that I disagree. There are thoughts that I disagree. But then I still include the stories in, because that's life. That's that's diversities. Yeah. So people just have different views, different perspective, and we have to accept that as a reality. And we have to have confidence in conversation. That through conversation, through listening to different perspective, and different stories, that we have some kind of like mutual understanding. I understand your position. I understand your views, even though I disagree with that. Yeah. So I think that is important for researcher and for public intellectuals, rather than shutting the conversation just because, you know, you say something that I disagree with.
Yeah. Good. You mentioned public intellectual. So I want to raise that question to both of you, right? What do you think about the role of Malaysian academics to take up a life as a public intellectual? So Koon, you have done this for a while.
I think it's going to be harder and harder to do this, because I think a lot depends on the shrinking of critical discourses in our society today. Sure, we now have a new government. They've only been there for about 8 months. I think Paul can correct me, or is it 9 months or something like that? Malaysia Madani. But then it's still very hard to be a public intellectual that is. You see, when you're a public intellectual, you'll inevitably be engaged in certain activities that might be deemed either sensitive or not very conducive to national unity or whatever you want to call it. But then again, it's still possible because if you work on a multiracial platform, there shouldn't be any quarrel. If you say, for example, some people, when they are social scientists, they don't only just do research. When they go to a group of people, say in a B40, I hate to use the word B40, I will bring them out, chop them out, because there are other people who are also in dire straits. B40, I'll always say. But if they are living in certain places that you want to do interviews, you can still do something good for them practically. You can still sort of, some of them have no idea of how to do where to get pro bono legal help. Some of them don't even know where the food banks are, and some of them need. Some of them, their children do not know that there are free tuition classes. You can do that. You know, the Malaysia, betapa kecil budi pekerti masih ada jasanya. Meaning, however small your little act of charity, budi pekerti, you'll still have some weight. So when you say public intellectual, don't go and just do research. If you have little things that you can do for people, you can open up certain avenues of help for them, go ahead and do it. As for writing as a public intellectual of great critical insight and great honesty and sharp critique, some people have done that and have been had to pack their bags and go to our neighboring country. I won't mention who. Singapore. So I've done that and have gone there. Yeah. But I think it is, I don't know, maybe it's also good just to be able to help people practically, even if you can't write very critically because of certain constraints of power, of the powerful. You still can do something to help people. You know, when you do the interview, there are little things you can sort of help people with that they may not know because some of them are not so knowledgeable. Pro bono legal work, very little, whether they can get some things, little practical acts of budi pekerti, we call it budi pekerti. Betapa kecil budi pekerti, masih ada jasanya, however small, you still have something. The other thing I would like to emphasize, although it sounds like I'm going back to the national narrative of nation, is that we must all be fluent in Bahasa. We have to be fluent in Bahasa because it is our national language. We have to be fluent in English, and also we have to learn Chinese if we can, or even the vernaculars. But not knowing Bahasa is a disadvantage to many of us. And for me, it has never been a problem right from standard 6 because I like the language, but also it's like, you know, you want to know Bahasa. You want to be able to publish in Bahasa too. You know, I don't know how you feel about that, Paul.
No, it is made just this year. It's made a part of the KPI that we need to produce writings, not necessarily in journal, but writings even for public readership to be at least in BM, which I think is good. Even without that KPI, I was thinking of writing in BM as well. I think I have 2 pieces of stories written in BM published by Pusat Sejarah Rakyat, I think last year or 2 years ago, about 2 activists in the 60s. But I don't know how many people read that book. It's about, I forgot about the title of the book, but it is published by Pusat Sejarah Rakyat. Yeah.
Just a small comment. Sometimes when I say this, I do get certain people, even colleagues, saying that it's almost as if they say that, why do you want to spend so much time on Bahasa? And when I used to be on the National Literary Awards, it's like, why you go there? It's so national. And, you know, the certain writers who are more critical won't be selected as the Sastrawan Negara, you know, which is our national laureate. I didn't feel that I shouldn't be there. Kheng used to be there. Then after that, Christian Jit used to be there. Then I was selected to be on it. Because I feel that I'm living here. I'm a citizen of this place, whether I like it or not. I have to master the language in some degree of competency. You know?
Yeah. Sometimes people get labeled as well because of doing that. That you're writing in a certain language, then you get labeled.
I've been labeled by a lot of people, even the people in Aliran, long ago.
What do you get labeled as?
Like, this Dewan Bahasa, they're all so centralized, the statutory body, and all the writers they select are all not a very critical. They've forgotten. Sharon Ahmad was selected. Ayo, what's the point? Why you sit there? You want to put it on your CV? I don't even bother to answer.
Yeah.
I don't even bother to answer.
So Koon, I mean, I was struck just now when you mentioned Operation Lalang, right? So as you know, someone who's kind of involved, right, in NGOs and all that. In Singapore, for example, in Operation Spectrum around the same time, right, as Lalang,
Yes.
is often seen to have a chilling effect on the civil society in Singapore. Have you ever, as a public intellectual, felt that kind of chill?
Not really. I think one of the reasons, I have to be honest, is that I was not then on the executive committee. I wasn't really a major part of Aliran. I was just a sort of a member, a new member. And also because Aliran is not one of those groups that they felt were extraordinarily threatening. It's not a political party. It's on the UN roster of NGOs. So there wasn't that sense. But nonetheless, as I did write in my article in Beng Lan's book, on the night of when we heard that Chandra was arrested, I think it was one of the Aliran members who came and took me to the main office to write letters of appeal. There was a sense of some kind of fear because we didn't know what else would happen, in the sense that, not so much to myself personally, but to Chandra. We don't know what happened to people inside during that few days or that few 1 week, or for some people even longer than 1 week. There's always a sense when power sends out its claws in concrete, brutalizing moments like this. I think there is always a chill. There is always a slight chill. The image is that of a predator with claws. Yeah, there will always be that.
Now, it brings the conversation just now brings back a memory of mine when I was teaching in Utah, University of Tunku Abdul Rahman. It is a political party run university. It's considered private university, but it is actually run by MCA. So it is owned and run by MCA. Back then, I used to teach in that college, in that university from 2009 to 2011 or 12, something like over 2 to 3 years. And during that time, it was already post 2008. That means there were power transition in Penang and in Selangor already. But then PN was responding with a lot of a very authoritarian measure against the opening up. People were organizing Brase, people were organizing anti-ISA rally. I remember when I was teaching in that university, there was this anti-ISA rally, and also Brase. And then we received letter actually from the university because MCA back then was a ruling party. So we received a letter that warned against participation in these rallies. So and I have students coming up to me asking me, they kind of like, they are attracted to the rally. They wanted to take part, but then they are unsure whether they should or not. So and it was actually quite difficult for me because I don't know whether the students, not purposely, but they may tell people that, oh, you see, Paul, back then I didn't have PhD yet. So Miss Paul Miss Paul asked us to join the rally. I don't want that to happen. So so I went there myself without telling my students, but then I saw some of them there. Yeah, and that was a very interesting moment. So they know my position without me telling them, but then they saw me in the rally, and then they know lah. But the experience of teaching in another community college is very different. That was New Era College, which is run by, all the courses were conducted in Mandarin. And when I was teaching in that community college, I brought students to the rally, no problem at all, because it wasn't controlled by any political party. I brought them to make videos, to make a documentary of the rally. Several. I remember there was this Phil Hyde the petrol price went up, and then so we had a rally against that policy, and several other street demonstrations. Yeah.
So what happened? I mean, in your case, so nothing.
Nothing
Huh?
happened.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. Yeah. And I think when I was teaching in Utah, I was also a student of USM. We also we were expected to sign Akujanji. So based on that Akujanji, I was not supposed to participate in any rally.
Explain that. What is that? Is some kind of agreement?
Yeah, it's an agreement between you and the university that you need to do a pledge that you will never take part in any anti-government kind of like activities. Cannot be critical about the state, the government, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. Your mention of Utah, right, actually strokes a memory in my mind. So in 2010, I think I organized an oral history in Southeast Asia conference. One of the participants was a Malaysian scholar, actually from Utah, a junior scholar.
Kayen. Leong Kayen.
No, not him.
No?
I mean, I remember him, Kayen, but he was not in Utah at the time. This other scholar, right? He presented something. I can't remember actually the topic very clearly. And afterwards, right, he said he's leaving. He had to leave Utah.
I think it's Kayen, Batang Kali about, no?
No, I don't think it's him. Because that one got published in the...
Ah.
Because this person's paper, right, he withdrew it.
Oh.
Yeah. So, I guess that's right? Public universities, there is a line that you got to be careful about.
Yeah.
I guess this would be even a bigger concern, right, for adjuncts and those who are not tenured.
Oh, I'm thinking the other way.
Yeah.
If you are adjunct, you are free to say whatever you want. But if you
Of course, you're free to say. You're always free to say. It's just the consequences, right?
The consequences. Yeah. I don't know. Because as adjunct, you have nothing to lose. But once you are a public servant, then you may face the consequences.
Does that happen in Malaysia? That you know of, right?
I think most people told their line. Most people told their line. I don't know about Koon's time. I think there were several cases.
I think there were, but without mentioning names, I would say that the censure can come in very subtle ways. It's not like they will say that, okay, we are terminating your service, or that they will say something like, you have to call to somebody's office to answer or something like that. But it could come in very, very subtle ways, like promotion denied,
yes,
or grants that it is very, when power is there, it will create among our colleagues people who are very obedient and very scared. So because you've done a little something, these people won't invite you to join their fund, what we call it, their research cluster anymore. So it's kind of a subtle cunning. Okay, so that can happen. It can happen. It can happen to people who are like, I don't know what to say lah, part-bodied or not so brave. But the people who are brave, and they're, USM during my time had some wonderful people, really wonderful people. Yeah, they won't care. They will say, okay, we got the grant. It is for a foreign grant. You just invite whoever you want. And most of the time, power, let us not forget, also has a face of cowardice, a mask of cowardice, isn't it? Because they also have to have discretion of some sorts if they want to prolong their power. So they wouldn't say, hey, sorry, you cannot have that fellow. They wouldn't.
Would they not just deny it or reject it altogether?
Hey, foreign grant, no. And the university can get a credit for that. No, you can get your upgrading. All these things. They will say, oh, tak apalah, Safis has got a workshop. Safis is giving your grant, or some Holland fellow is giving, somebody from Holland is giving you a grant, or somebody, Sumitomo, is giving you a grant, or go, wow. They will not do anything.
Yeah.
Because it is to the glory of the university. And most of the people, unfortunately, in USN during my time, I don't know about now, who are like this, who are able to get foreign grants, are very strong people. They don't care. Also brilliant scholars. So with that kind of, what you call that, what we call armor, why should they care? But of course, if they for long run, they also have to kowtow a bit because otherwise you can't get any position. You can't get to be a dean if you don't kowtow a bit, or at least not kowtow, but at least show that you're not going to be a rebel without a cause to the usage without cause. So, but and they have been good years in USM. I don't know about now. I just don't want you to feel that the public universities are all horrible. They're very good people. You just need time to toss them up. You just need time to sense them up. And you just need time to be able to, what word can I say? Allow people to open up. You know how Asian culture is? Certain groups of people are very quiet. I know of a few of our colleagues, Boon Kheng knows them too. They did very good work, but they're very quiet. So he has a way of drawing them out. I certainly don't have a way of drawing out because I talk too much and the poor guy who's quiet doesn't have anything to say anymore. so there is time for you. You just need to have time to look for people, to see who people are. But of course, in all scenarios, we have to be very careful because you don't want to jeopardize anything.
So cool.
Adjuncts also suffer. Adjuncts will suffer also, Paul, because you know what? It won't be. It can be not renewed at all. Maybe 1 year. That's all.
But in USA, we hardly have any adjunct. Public university, they hardly hire part-time lecturer.
They don't have the funds. They don't have the funds. They don't have the funds.
Okay. It's a different situation, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But private universities, yes, they do hire a lot of adjunct because that saves a lot of money.
So do the public universities have a lot of like contracted or non-tenure academics?
Over the last few years, it's getting more and more common.
Right. Okay. So Koon, you mentioned Boon Kheng a few times, right? I mean, I love his work. Could you maybe say something about him from your own friendship?
Boon Kheng is a very reticent, private person. So I happen to know the wife more. But he is very willing to share if you asked him about history, if you asked him about Mat Kilau, if you asked him about the emergency, which is his forte. He's very willing to share. But we do have a little bit of disagreement where history and literature are concerned. I do remember telling him that I was going to write on Pramodia in Bahasa about this tetralogy, Pramodia Minka, and then all that. And of course, it's very, very well translated by Max Brod into English. Then he said, oh, I see. But then, you have to be very, history, we have to have some records and all that. Sort of like the empiricist, the record, the colonial record part of him is still very important. Although whatever British record, is it that British, whatever place, the place where everybody goes to who's a historian. So he says you have to have that. You cannot just have not that. So, of course, Eileen was just smiling. She didn't know. And she was just sort of supporting me and saying, oh, but sometimes you have to imaginative history too. So that is the only thing. But he was very supportive of a lot of people. He was also very kind to one of our colleagues who's a very good scholar. He came from National University. This one I can mention. His pastor, wonderful man, Dr. Sundralingam, first class in National University during the time of Wong Wu. Wong Wu knows him too. But he was a more silent man. But he obviously very much more silent than Boon Kheng. But Boon Kheng had the ability to get through to him, and they shared a lot of, I believe, curry lunches. So there is that. I don't look at an academic or anybody just by seeing how much they've done or whatever. I see what is a kindness done to somebody who's a silent, rather sort of like, should I use the word lonely, a solitary colleague. Boon Kheng did that. That was a mark of his humanity, because very few people would have done that. Obviously, the man must have been quite a difficult person in some ways, but he did. So that is a mark of his humanity. But literature and history, he said, very careful. Must go to the British Record Office, this office, look at this.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Okay, last question. In the beginning, we talked about this culture of reading, right? And the younger generation today, with their social media, they are reading a lot less, how has your experience been in terms of trying to encourage, young Malaysian students, as well as maybe faculty to read history, to read literature? Are you hopeful about their reading?
I've been out of touch with academia for a long time, even with young colleagues, now, except for the few that I meet in Averan and all that. But I do still teach O levels and A levels literature because I enjoy it very much. And of course, I wouldn't be dishonest and say that the money doesn't help. Of course, the money helps so that I can go more to coffee bean, tea leaf, all the bourgeois coffee joints. The thing is that I find that with most of these people, you cannot discount IT and ebooks. There's no point telling them, hey, go and buy that. So whatever is free, if they want to read it, I do allow that. So I'm not totally discouraged by the young, that the young are not reading. It's just that reading from ebooks, they still do. The kind of reading is what I worry about. Like at the moment, I have one who loves Hunger Games, Suzanne Collins' Hunger Games, which I personally, I'm not saying it's bad. I don't want to stop him because he enjoys it so much. He wants to buy all the series. But I had to steer him away from that to not Macbeth. Don't worry, Kaching, not Macbeth. I mean, I can't sing. No? What am I have a friend called Kaching. Not Macbeth. But at least steer him away to read Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. The fact that people are still willing to read, even electronic or otherwise, is still something. And do you know that MPH recorded a surge in sales of certain books? Not IT books, a surge in sale of books that have to do with like fantasies, never mind, they can still read. Or robots, the robotics, the kind of thing, that kind of, what do you call that? Those things that can transform into various things. People are still reading. But what of the classics? Are there? I'm a little bit discouraged. What about David Copperfield? What about all those old books that Paul Graves' Golden Treasury, which I enjoyed? The accusation would be you're still trying to be a British colonial relic. But what about the joy in all of these old books? Very slow. They say very slow. David Copperfield, the orphan boy, I don't care what he did, how he got very poor, he had no money, then he took out his hand and said, more, please. They don't care. They want something fast, action-oriented. Because you know why? Computer games. I hate computer games.
What? I play computer games all the time.
Sorry, so I cannot stand it. In fact,
Hate,
I told the
such
boy,
a strong word.
Yes. Auntie here never uses
Why?
words. Here is very bad. I'm using not grey words. No, because computer games tend to make them want to have instant solutions. Somebody must be slain quite fast. Somebody must be killed quite fast. But they don't want to go slow to read. They don't want to see the hidden 2/3 of the iceberg. They're only staying with the monsters on the one third. This saddens me. This saddens me tremendously. But the mom says, I can't stop him. And a girl I told you who says, half an hour is enough reading for me. She's into Latin dancing, for which she's the champion for the whole of Malaysia. And she's only 40 years old. Latin dance, And for that, she can practice for hours on end. But reading, half an hour enough to go. So today, there's too much activity. Too much activity, Kaji. Abikasit. The thing that I'm sad about is that the old canonical works, which I know would sound very colonial, are still important. Still important. But why are they not read anymore? Or even something from Guyana. Nobody wants to read. Or something from Africa. Nobody wants to read. Or Malaysia, even Shirley Lim, or even today, Keith Tuan Chai, nobody wants to read. Or any other fellow. Rahman Rashid. Have you read Rahman Rashid? You should read. Wonderful essays. Passed away already.
You can do a series of TikTok videos.
I don't like TikTok.
You have.
You know what? I tell you, there's one TikTok of Gaza. This girl is supposed to be speaking for the Gazans. but she's got her long nails all highly manicured. I told Musa, please don't send me that. And then she's wearing a very revealing dress with her hair all done up nicely. And then she said, please, you all support Gaza. So ridiculous. She's dressed like a top model and she's wearing a very revealing baju and dress. And she says, I'm talking about Gaza. Please, it is TikTok that has... Sorry lah, kan?
No lah, you got the voice for it, you got the personality, you got the emotions and passion. You'll be wonderful.
I don't want. TikTok is so terribly full of ticks and no talk.
So far.
So
You can change that.
I already told Musa, please don't send me any more TikToks. I don't know. All these TikToks, tolong. I told Anu, don't send me TikToks. That's why I left the Aliran chat.
See, Aliran also embrace it.
One video of monkeys and all that. Oh, please. I cannot stand it. Sorry. This is an older lady speaking. So for your IG and TikTok will be very good. It is very good.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is very useful, but please come on. Thank you.
I'm the old school as well.
Okay, Paul. What is your
I'm
view?
the old school.
Yeah.
I am the old school. I also cannot deal with TikTok. I usually just ignore whatever TikTok that is sent through my WhatsApp. I'll just ignore it. And I'm so much more pessimistic than Koon in regards to the reading culture or the reading habits among the younger generation today, because based on my teaching experience nowadays, even though USM has a library, but people just don't get in there. When they get in there, it's actually for the aircon. And because, and only from what I can see, usually in a class, if you can meet one or two students who are into reading, then you should be very happy. You should feel happy already. Usually there are people who still enjoy reading and they do read a lot and widely, but the percentage is very low. Perhaps in a class of 30, 40 students, maybe only one or two, or even the most, perhaps not more than 5 students. 5 is a lot already. Perhaps only two or three students. And but not to blame them. I think the way the courses are structured in our universities these days is the same for private or public universities. There are just too many subjects, which I think students just don't have time to really read, because you imagine one subject expects them to submit 2 or 3 assignments per semester. If they are taking 6 or 7 subjects, how many assignments they have to do? And so I think we also have to reflect on the way we structure their the training and the courses. I think it's better to go in depth rather than touches everything just on the surface. And from this perspective, I don't think we could blame students. It's not their fault. But in my own class, I have done some experiment, like trying to get them to read, but they usually complain about English. But even when I turn into Malay text, they still have difficulty. So it shows that it's not about language. It's about getting, familiarize yourself with concepts and ideas, which is something they are not familiar with, because the rote learning in secondary school is just so pervasive, and then they cannot, they are still, they cannot get rid of that kind of learning. It's going to take a long time to really unlearn that kind of rote learning and to become a more engaged kind of close reading, reading the text closely so that you can understand what you are reading, which I don't think I can change that just in my own class, because there are so many subjects out there. And that is the challenge. So as a kind of but I still stick to this idea of trying to cultivate critical thinking. So critical thinking can be cultivated without just forcing students to read.
Yep.
So I try to engage with using not TikTok but documentary maybe for 20 minutes or 40-50 minutes. Let get them to watch a documentary and then talk about the documentary, what they have seen in the documentary, and then have discussion on the documentary and so on and so forth. So this is what I try to do, because even observation is a skill that I find that it's a skill that for those who are used to rote learning, they are not used to observing things, observing the society, observing human behaviors, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Does it work better? Documentaries?
I think it works good for my class. At least they are exposed to certain issues which I think relevant and significant.
Because they actually watch it in real time, right? And then they respond to it.
I will give them the link. They don't have to watch it real time. They can watch it anytime, but they need to come up with a presentation based on the documentary. And then they're expected to ask questions. Yeah, so they would be exposed to a lot of contemporary issues, which I think important for social scientists. Yeah.
So do they still read the text as a supplement, or did you just forgo the text completely?
It depends on subject. Yeah. I'm teaching a subject called like theory and method. And for theory and method, I do force them to read a little bit, but still very difficult, really. Some, they can just read 1 or 2 pages and then they give up. But at least they read the 1 and 2 pages. Yeah. So I think this is really challenging. And now with all these apps, technology, it really done a lot of damages to teaching. For example, in the past, whatever we want to cite, we must at least read that book in order, or that article in order to cite, right? Now there is app that helps you to do citation without going through the text, which is really bad. And so you have students, they can write an essay with a long list of references without reading. They haven't read anything. Yeah. Now I have talked to, having conversation with colleagues, telling them that when it comes to like Viva or whatever, we must make sure that we ask students, okay, in your list of reference, you have referenced this author or that author. What do you think about that author? What did that author write about? Then if they couldn't answer, that means they have never read that book.
Yeah. I think your documentary method is an excellent one, and again, it shows that you are trying to, not just do the usual practice and follow other academics, citing readings, as you did, right, with the oral history book. I'm quite sympathetic to the students in this sense, increasingly many of these academic texts that are used as readings, they are not written with the students in mind, right? They are written for other academics to read, and it's a very closed circle, right? So even if you take away the language, it's not just about the language or the jargon. It's that these books are not speaking to students in the first place. They are speaking to other academics. So I completely understand if, so how do we solve this, right? One way is, of course, you use other kind of media, other kinds of readings, right, to provoke and to stimulate. The other way is that the academics must change what they write. They must write with students in mind. There must be specialized textbooks for this, right? And so I think it's a good idea if academics can come together and say, for this course that we are doing, we want to put up a special textbook that actually guides the students through. I mean, if you look at the school curriculum, right? I think in Malaysia probably as well, they are increasingly, right, to get students to think in a certain way, to go through the material in a certain way. They are very helpful in that sense, and not just, all right, you read this and then you come to class and talk about it. So I think that there is probably a way that academics can write something that has more with the students in mind.
Yeah, the idea of textbook, I think that is very good suggestion. But sadly, with all these KPI, I think
time, resources. That's a huge thing. I mean, it must make money, right? The textbooks must sell. It can't be a free textbook, right? They must be sold in a way then that justifies the time.
Mm. Yeah.
But I think there need to be a balance.
Mm.
There need to be a balance so that when you are writing a textbook for university students, I think you must be aware that the guidance level or the sort of like structures need not and should not be the same as for secondary schools. I think there must be a balance, because otherwise there is the risk of simplification. It is always difficult to effect a balance in life, right? You want to guide the students, but you also don't want to oversimplify. Because they're at the level of tertiary level. You don't want to write in such a way that it like obfuscates like some of the theories, but you also don't want it to be so simple. You want it to be able to stimulate some thought. Otherwise, the age-old word of spoon feeding can come in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
you know,
It's not easy.
nowadays
But your point is well taken.
Yeah.
Your point is well taken. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like inquiry-based, like open-ended rather than, giving information, right? I mean, I would just wanted to say that in Singapore schools, right, the school textbooks have actually become very sophisticated, very, very challenging.
I see.
Yeah, quite crazy, actually. I think
Haven't
they're
seen them yet.
over-teaching. Yeah. Anyway, it's been a great almost 2 hours. I'm just wondering, what should the title of this podcast be?
Oh, I'm hopeless with titles. I'm hopeless with titles of all sorts, honorifics and titles. No way. You better ask Paul.
Paul?
I don't know.
We must arrange some kind of person-to-person meetup.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so I will get ready to go down to
You better
some
go.
makan.
Yeah.
See you then.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay,
Enjoy
bye.
your lunch. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you both for sharing, all right? It's been a wonderful chat.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
See you
Thanks for
guys.
having us. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.